Hi. Recently, one of the famous Bollywood actor committed suicide because he was dealing with depression. And I know that it might seem easier to judge someone who have taken away their own life because we don't know what they are going through. But I do know what depression feels like. I'm certain that most of us have felt the waves of depression. But depression itself is a very complex and relative issue because every one of us are going through a different life experiences, so how we perceive life is completely different, and what it means to be depressed is also different from person to person. But one of the feelings which I experienced when I was going through my depression, and in some sense still am, but some of the feelings are this feeling of emptiness. And this emptiness feeling is not just temporary. It feels like an endless cycle. Although I can just talk about my experience, I cannot judge or I cannot put my words into somebody else's experience. But what I personally feel is that depression, in a way, has its positive effect, at least for me, again, because I started feeling depression after I did everything which the society says you should do in order to become happy. So, after completing my master's, I found a job and I was working at that job for 2 or 3 years in, and then I started feeling this emptiness within me, and that was eating away me from inside. There were a lot of times when I had very weird, unusual thoughts altogether. Uh, and then I reflected back uh, at what I was doing, how I was doing. Are there any reasons which are causing this depression or adding on to the depression? Because if depression gonna be an underlying if depression gonna be an underlying layer all the time, and if I'm piling up on that because of my choices and action, it's like creating a perfect storm, because I'm creating these situations where one thing leads to another and it spirals me down into the black hole of depression. And one of the biggest help was ayahuasca. After going through some of a few ayahuasca session, I have this different energy within me altogether. And I'm not saying that's a solution for everybody, for anybody. Everyone is different. So again, you have to make your own choices. You have to be judgmental about yourself. If you're still dealing with some of the survival instinct, then or survival necessities, then maybe ayahuasca or any other psychedelics may not be for you. Or again, I'm not an expert on that to begin with, so I don't want to say something which doesn't reflect majority of the people, right? All I can do is just share my experience. And after going through ayahuasca experience, I observed the changes within me. And one of the reasons why I believe ayahuasca helped me and other psychedelics helps me is because it pauses, or actually it breaks, because it breaks down the chain of thoughts. So depression itself is this negative chain of thought which pulls me down, which spirals me down. But just having this break in that chain of thought gave me a different perspective altogether towards life. And that was a huge, huge, huge help to pull me out of the deep hole I was in. And on top of that, once I started practicing meditation and start being more mindful about my surroundings, I started to feel more in present instead of being lost in the thoughts. And that's one important aspect of it, because depending on what type of sequence your thoughts are running on, you might feel hard to come out of those thoughts at some point. So that's why these resetting experiences of, say, meditation, mindfulness, or psychedelics can help you to pause those thoughts and look at everything from a different point of view. And then you'd be like, huh, this doesn't make sense. Why am I doing this, which is actually causing more negative harm? Negative and harm are the same thing. Why am I doing this, which is causing more harm to my personal life altogether? And we do have this innate self-destruction button within ourselves. I'm not sure why, but we do. Sometimes it comes up in the times of sacrifice. So, when we are selfless enough to sacrifice ourselves, that's a good side of it. But plenty of times this self-sabotaging comes when we are dedicated to do something. Like, if you want to be creative and want to put in your hard work onto some craft, this self-sabotage, this resistance will pull you out of that work, and will self-sabotage your growth altogether. And I still don't know why we have it. There might be some evolutionary use for that. But in general, some of the tools which helped me and probably can help you as well to relieve yourself from this depression is to gauge how satisfied you are with your life altogether and in different areas of your life. Because once you start gauging your satisfaction, then you'll be able to kind of write down what might be some of the reasons which is adding on to depression. I'm not saying that, a specific area of your life is a cause of depression, because again, it's a complex issue, but it can very well add on to it. So let's just say if you just lost a job, and if you're feeling depressed about it, it pile on to your depression. And let's just say on top of that, if your physical health is deteriorating, then that add more pile on that. And the more piles you add on to that, say, depression layer, it pulls you down even further. So just looking at it from different angles, it would be helpful to kind of gauge your satisfaction in different areas of your life. Like, how satisfied are you with your relationships? Whether it's friendships, whether it's romantic relationships, whether it's something deeper, connection with the universe, or however you want to label it, or how happy you are. Not just in the moment, but say consistently for past 6 months. Do you feel happy? Do you feel that there has been more moments of happiness versus more moments of sadness in your life? So that can help you to kind of gauge your satisfaction level. And then physical health and mental health, these are pretty easy to gauge. I mean, from satisfaction level, how energetic you feel physically, not just today, but for the past 6 months or for the past year. See if you see a pattern within your recent life where you are feeling that your energy is drained off. And if you do, then what could be the plausible reasons for that? There are so many different factors which can lead the drain of energy. And likewise, on the mental health standpoint, how stressful you feel. Is that stress warranted? Is it just because a client emailed you, which is causing you stress for no reason? Or is it some sort of phobia within you? If you're, I don't know, claustrophobic, then if you confine yourself into a house during this lockdown period, it could trigger a phobia within you, or any other PTSD you have suffered in the past and haven't worked on it. So these are some of the things which could pile on to your mental health issues altogether. So you can list out the satisfaction with your physical and mental health, and then list out how satisfied you are with your career, with your finances, and overall with your growth. Like, how much did you grow in the past year? If you can put a number on it, then write it down, how satisfied you are with your overall life altogether. And the other tool you can use is to write down the end goal of your life. Because sooner or later, we all will age and we all will die. So that's the truth of this reality. So instead of avoiding that, why not embrace it and project ourselves into the future and see what is the end goal of our life altogether? And personally, there are two cases, right? There would be a best case scenario and there would be a worst case scenario. If you're living your best case scenario, say, 30, 40 years, 10 years, whatever maybe the timeline from now, what that best case scenario looks like. What are your expectations from life by the time you die? And worst case scenario would be if nothing you did or are doing going to work out, how that will look like for you by the time you die. And the way I look at the best case scenario, it's pretty straightforward. Like, the goals I wanted to achieve in my life, with minimal resentment and maximum satisfaction. And the worst case scenario, the way I look at it, is from the lens of stoicism, which is, if I lose all the materialistic position I have at this moment, what would my life look like? And sure, some of the things are very close to my heart. For an example, I love my car. But if I end up losing my car, it's not the end of the world. I mean, it served its purpose. It served its purpose. But it's not end of the world. I will still be able to survive. I'll still be able to live. So what would be the worst case scenario? And sometimes these worst case scenario can help you to fuel your life so that you don't end up at the worst case scenario. So it's important to kind of, just list out what you expect from the life and what you don't expect at all. And the most important part is to not stick with the worst case scenario, because if we give more energy to the worst case scenario, then we are in some sense breathing life into it. So it's all fancy, it's all good to just explore that worst case scenario, but don't stick with it. Just go to the best case scenario, because that's where we want to focus all of our life energy and build our life as well as our mindset towards that best case goal. So that would be another tool to kind of list out how you want to come out from this depression if you're feeling it. And the third thing is to understand that most of the life events are temporary. Whether it's a good thing or the bad thing, these are all temporary events. Sure, we might still feel depressed for extended amount of time, but these depression will be enhanced if we are going through a temporary setback. So just taking a calm, deep breath during these temporary setbacks and understanding that this is not going to be throughout my life will help you to deal with these temporary setbacks. Hell, at some points, if you just even look at these setbacks as a life giving you a sign to focus your energy into some other direction, or just symbiotically work with these life signs and see where it is leading you, that might even help you, because plenty of times life give you the path of least resistance. And if you desire to, let's just say, start a business, but if you're trapped in a 9 to 5 job which you don't want to or don't like to, then maybe being fired from that job is a good thing, because the life is giving you a sign that you have to move on from something which you don't want to something which you do. And the biggest factor which helped me is to change the story which I'm telling myself, or change the lens altogether. And this comes with continuous, constant learning. The second I understand that I have no idea what's going on in the world, and not just that, nobody in the world have any idea. Nobody knows what they are doing. Everyone is making up in this moment. Some are able to use their prior experience, and that's why you can see them being more decisive, see them that they know what they are doing. But to be really honest, whatever you're experiencing in this moment, or whatever they are experiencing at this moment, they have never experienced it before. They might have experienced similar situations in the past, and that's what is helping them to make a better choice, make a better decision. But we are living this moment and not repeating it. We never lived this moment in the past. So this is a brand new moment we are all living. So whatever you come up with, don't be harsh on yourself. Be empathetic and compassionate to yourself, because you're trying to figure it out. Everyone is figuring it out as they move along. So instead of blaming yourself, try to figure out what would be the different lens you can use to look at your life. And sure, sometimes blaming yourself helps, because it keeps you in check. It keeps your ego in check before it go haywire. But plenty of times it's counter-effective. Instead of blaming yourself, if you look, or if you pick a lens which will help you in a long term, that will be a better strategy. So if you lack any skills which you need to achieve the best end goal of your life, then take a step today to get familiar with that tool, with that skill, and then take a step tomorrow to put your tip in that water, and then take a step the next day, and then take a step the day after, and the day after, and the day after. Once you start consistently taking those steps, a year from now, you will be much closer to your best case scenario, end goal, than where you are today. So just change the lens with which you're looking at your own life, and that helps a lot. And the other tool is to build up your inner strength, because that is the single most important aspect of this life. And I'm not saying that people who are going through depressive times don't have inner strength. Again, because it's very complex and very relative. Because you may be strong internally, you may be the shield of your family for that matter, but at times life throws you with different circumstances which shake away all that shield. So it's not about saying that I'm not saying that if you're going through a depression it means that you're weak. It's opposite. I'm just saying that you still have energy within you to become stronger. It's like if you're going to a gym and if you try to lift up 100 pounds very first day, the chances are you won't be. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It just means that you have to work on yourself so that you can lift up those weights. So that's what inner strength means to me. So some of the practices which I do to build my inner strength is meditation, is mindfulness, and occasionally psychedelics. And there are quite a few other practices as well, like sensory deprivation, like sauna, like working out, like putting myself in a healthier, stressful circumstances, like, going up on stage every single time, going up on stage every single day. And that put like this nervousness, that built up this healthy stress within me. So whatever challenges you, one of the best way is to practice martial arts, because that will challenge you to the core. It's not just physical stress, but also a mental stress, and that builds your inner strength all together. And a couple of other things which I want to talk about is what you could do to come out of this depression. First and foremost, be hopeful. Be hopeful that whatever you're going through will fade away. Sure, you might still have this underlying layer of depression, but be hopeful that you'll have tools to manage that layer really well. And try to find a purpose. See, it's the whole glamour around finding a purpose is overrated. You can find purpose in your day-to-day life. Maybe when you're hungry, your purpose is to cook food and eat it. When you feel ignorant, then your purpose is to educate yourself and then gain that knowledge. So find that purpose, and it doesn't have to be some granular purpose. You can build up to that granular purpose by finding purposes in your day-to-day life. So whenever you feel hungry, then treat that as a purpose of your life is to feed yourself, and be grateful, of course. The other mindset is to be grateful, because once you realize that what you do have in itself something you should be grateful for, then it will alleviate the pressure for you to, you know, accumulate more wealth, accumulate more materialistic position. Because if it haven't helped you so far, even having tenfolds more wealth may not significantly help you with your mental happiness. Don't get me wrong, money is one of the important tool to feel the happiness in life, because if you don't have money, you're inducing yourself into a suffering. And or to rephrase, having money may not add to happiness, but not having money will most likely gonna add to your suffering. So money is an important tool, but this attachment with the money, and on top of that, the attachment of having such and such amount of money means that you're successful, means that you're, whatever label you want to attach to it, that is causing you sadness for sure. Because in that moment, money becomes more than a tool, it becomes something which you attach to your life itself. And when you don't get what you attach to your life, then that will create a deep emptiness within you. And that's one of the reasons why you would see that a lot of famous, a lot of wealthy, a lot of talented people feel depressed too, because none of these things are answer to the depression. And again, it depends from person to person. But regardless of that, one thing which does help me personally is service. And let me tell you, I'm not the best person to talk about service because I haven't served enough. I haven't served enough people. I haven't served enough beings or enough causes which I believe in, because I'm still battling through my own personal insecurities. But I've heard people who have bounced out of this depression, that serving others helped them to get out of their depression, because there are multiple layers to serving as well. Instead of focusing inwards, you're focusing outwards. So you're not being selfish, you're being selfless. And when you serve, you have a purpose. And when you serve, you feel happy from inside. And in a lot of ways, what I'm doing right now is a service. And that's why I feel happy most of the times when I sit here and these things. And, when I meditate, when I go on stage and serve my audience by trying to be my true self and working internally to craft a joke which can make them smile, make them laugh. So that's an art of service. So find anything where you can serve somebody else, and that will definitely alleviate you from this depressive state. And at the end of all of this, understand that depression is sort of transformation. Depression can lead you to transforming your life altogether. Because when you go into that deep darkness within you, and once you have touched down to the limit of that darkness, there is nothing else anymore. So the only thing after that is the light. So that's the transformation I'm talking about. And maybe this is the reason why a lot of psychonauts explore the path of, say, meditation, psychedelics, or the extreme adventurous sports, because they try to get to the limit of that internal, it could be dark side, it could be light, it could be anything, that to the limit of your depression, say. And that will, I gotta rephrase this. I believe that the people who practice meditation or psychedelics and adventure sports, they're actually doing deep work within. Because deep inside, they are going through their internal process to understand the limits of their insecurities, limits of their beliefs, limits of their depression, limits of their unhappiness, limits of whatever they are going through. And once you reach out to that limit, once you dedicate enough time, energy, and focus to work on those limits, then those limits transform into limitless. Regardless of anything, I feel the pain when people who are going through depression decide to end their life. I get that pain. And the reality is nobody knows what's after this life. Sure, religions try to exploit it by creating this narrative of heaven and hell. But I don't think that's the reality. I feel nobody knows what lies after we die. So taking our life may not be the end of this life, but working in this life, putting all the work in this life, learning all the tools you would need, preparing yourself for all the adversities in your life, that will surely help. See, even after, say, 40 years from now, or 50 years, or who knows after how many years I'll die, but let's just say once I die, there's nothing after that. Well, I didn't lose anything if I still put in all the work throughout my life. And let's just say once I die, there's something beyond life. Then still, I don't lose anything by putting in all the work, all the and preparing myself throughout this life to be strong enough during the time of adversities. So it doesn't matter what lies after death. If I'm building on to my inner strength, if I'm working on myself, then it doesn't matter. And on top of that, I feel that depression is not a one moment. It's a sequence of events. Or I feel that person who wanna commit a suicide doesn't came to that decision within a moment. There are a lot of sequences which build onto their lives, which led to that moment. And those sequences could have been prevented. And those sequences could have been worked on. So personally, if I feel that things are stacking against me, then instead of then I will choose to work on, personally, if I feel that things are stacking against me, then I will dismantle those things and try to work on each and individual things. Because there is no such thing as a giant unhappiness. There are unhappiness moments, and likewise there are no such thing as, like, huge happiness, because there are happier moments. And likewise too, depression, there is no one moment of depression. There are depressive moments throughout our lives, and once it all stack up, once it all piles up, it could feel that it's so strong enough that it can burden us down. And in those moments, people act the way they act. And again, I feel the best way to tackle depression is to actually reach out to people, to seek out for help. And I don't just mean to kind of, to gain sympathy or of some sort. Let me rephrase. I mean that reaching out to people could be in different ways. It could be one on one, if you have a close friend or close family member to whom you want to disclose, or it could be to a psychiatrist, which can help you by providing different tools. Or you can even reach out by absorbing different knowledge, different books, like read the books of people who went through similar journey and how they came out of their own struggles. That will provide you with tools to kind of help yourself. That's why they call it self-help. Well, with that note, I'm gonna start meditating for next hour using Vipassana technique. And meditation is one of the best practice to build this long-term satisfaction with your life. And it again varies from person to person, but give it a try, give it a shot. Maybe start meditating for 10 minutes a day, see how you feel about it, and see the changes within your life, see how satisfied you were before and after you start this practice. And hopefully it will help you to stand up to the adversities in your life. All right, before I set an alarm, I need to turn on the appliances in the room. All right, guys, I will see you in an hour. Thanks for joining me for this hour long meditation session. Until next time,